Nations.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please.
Certainly. Michael Albetta,
Here.
Nadine Hankerson, Daniel McCauley,
Here.
Mary Pellegrin. Here. And Chair Wise.
Here.
You have the floor, sir.
Right, Paul has a little corrections to make on the March 6th minutes, right?
Yes, it's just a couple of typos on the second page at the bottom. Charter came out charter.
Noted, thank you.
Right. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes with Paul's amendments?
I can make a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Update charter review, Ashley.
So the last time I was here, I presented you with the communications plan for outreach. Today I have a draft, and it should be in your packets. I do have some extra copies if needed. A draft of the suggested language for the web page that we would be using to educate people on what the charter is, why it's important, and some of the things that we know that the city commission would like for this board to look at, with the intention of asking residents if they want to see these things come up on the ballot, on a future ballot. So I guess my question is do you want to, have you had time to review these? Do you want to go through it now? Or do you have any suggestions that you'd like to start with?
Me personally, no. I did. Dan?
I did not, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I can just start and we can read through it and you can stop me if you'd like to for anything. So your city, your charter, your vote. I wanted to be very clear that this is up to the voters. The city of Fort Lauderdale is considering amendments to its charter. The charter is like our city's constitution and guides how the city is governed. It explains how decisions are made, who's responsible for what, and how services like parks, roads, and public safety are provided. It outlines the roles of the mayor, city commissioners, and city manager, ensuring everyone works together to serve the community. It's designed to keep everything running smoothly and fairly for residents like you. Any changes to the charter must be approved by the residents through a public vote. Your vote decides how our government works. Right now, we're reaching out to residents like you to hear your thoughts. Are there things in the charter you think should be updated or changed? Your input is vital in shaping the future of Fort Lauderdale, and we want to make sure any potential updates reflect the needs and priorities of our community. City Commission has directed the Charter Revision Board to review potential amendments to the city charter, including, but not limited to, the form of government. And here's what I feel like is probably the most simplified explanations of these 4 items. The city of Fort Lauderdale currently operates under a council manager system where the mayor and commission set policy and the city manager oversees implementation. A proposed change would shift to a strong mayor system where the mayor would have additional executive authority, including the ability to hire and dismiss employees.
The question I had with that is the word proposed. And the question is, who is proposing it? Is it being considered? It's being considered, but I don't, is there somebody who's proposing this?
I think the commission's direction, and I know specifically the mayor wanted this board to consider it.
That's different than proposing.
Okay.
I'm not trying to pick on your words, but I just want
Right.
to be, I don't want to assume things that are not, I think it's probably maybe a
Potential change?
potential change
Okay.
or an alternate form of
An
governance.
example, an alternate form of government, I think would be appropriate there. Yeah. Okay.
What form did we get these? I mean, would you say the mayor proposed this one
We
with?
got that, and it was forwarded to, there was that report from Anthony, which contained a bunch of city commission corrections to us. And one of the things that was in there.
I actually don't believe I got that. Can someone pull that to me?
We talked about it last
I know.
time and it was, I think it was re-forward, so maybe a bunch of stuff that.
The next day.
So
Okay,
maybe,
but I-
maybe,
alright.
I'll forward it to you.
Yeah,
and maybe it was in a whole bunch of stuff that
Yeah,
goes to the
fair enough.
deep in there.
Possible.
Yeah, when you get a packet about anything to do with it, it's a lot of
yeah,
stuff.
There's a lot.
In my.
I don't write anything short.
So, so to answer your question, these 4 items were discussed with staff from Anthony's guidance as 4 items that we wanted to put forward as suggestions from the commission to get feedback on whether or not the residents wanted to see these on the ballot.
Anthony, when there's just words that we changed, it says a proposed change.
So we're gonna change proposed to an alternate form of government would shift.
Because I'm not sure.
Rather than saying
I'm
it's
not
been
really sure
proposed.
who's proposing it
Okay.
at the moment.
Yeah, that's.
I think just make sure it's an example of another form of government. Because there's more even than that.
Yes, there are.
Right. Okay.
One, you could say one change, one
Example.
option would be, or something like that, but it should be not that. I don't want anybody to read this and say, oh, I'm against what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because we haven't done anything.
Right, okay.
The second one I think is pretty neutral. Charter board is assessing whether this requirement should remain in place. I think that's fair as per, I've been asked to assess, because that's part of the city commission's request.
Sorry. Which one are you on? You're still on city manager residence?
Yes. They ask us specifically to assess this.
No, I think this came up as part of the conversations.
Okay, so I think the charter board is assessing, I think that's a pretty neutral word. It doesn't create a sharp edge where somebody can say, I'm in favor of that, or, And then we would adjust the elections. Staggered term, okay. I would make this neutral again, actually.
Rather than saying this amendment would adjust to change it to
Sounds like,
an option or
right.
I can say, currently.
Considered is,
Right. Currently, all commissioners are elected at the same time, an alternate option or something like that.
well, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if we can go back to the city manager residency.
Sure.
Was it more whether that requirement should be strengthened or changed? I don't know if the question for you is whether it should remain in place.
But I think it kind of evolved, I think you're right. I think it evolved over time during the discussion. Came up as a result of the project, right, wasn't within the city. Then that kind of started to get people talking about, like, wait a second, given the fact that we've changed since the city was originally incorporated, our boundaries are now merged with other cities. Does it make sense to require that when, for instance, you live in Milton Manors and get to anywhere in Fort Lauderdale just as easily? So then we all talked about whether if we're gonna do that, should it be a distance from the city or something
Maybe
like
we should
that?
just change this. The charter board is reviewing this requirement.
Okay,
yeah.
Very neutral, very, people haven't thought about it. It opens it up to them and it doesn't, we did stagger terms. You have that, right, Ashley?
Yes.
What do you think about adding to that statement? Something to recognize that we used to have staggered terms. So we non-staggered terms now. And
I'm trying to be very,
Pre-1987.
if we had staggered terms prior to the charter amendment.
There were staggered, I believe the staggered terms changed in 1980s.
too much detail. How about somebody like,
I did have my associate put together a summary of all the charter revisions in history, so I do have that here. But I haven't reviewed it yet. Might circulate.
okay, what if we just say the charter board is assessing whether all city commission seats should be up for election at the same time or something? Is discussing. Anthony, what do you think of that, Paul?
Yeah.
I just want to be very,
Reviewing or discussing.
reviewing, discussing, right?
You don't want it to sound like this is what we're doing.
On the
No, because we haven't said.
I like the word reviewing.
Mr. Chair.
Viewing's good.
Reviewing.
Viewing's good, that's all right. All right. Public land uses, this amendment to revise the process, or, I think, again, we're reviewing
Right.
processes, processes maybe that the city utilizes for selling, leasing, or repurposing city-owned land. Period.
Charter. So the charter review board is assessing the process. Discussing or assessing?
Better.
I'm wondering whether the word use should be there, because we had some, in preparing the agenda, we had some internal discussions about that. So it's not about land use, it's, the use really is only for leases, licenses, and use agreements, facilities, and the like. But this is also about sale, disposition, transfer. So I'm hoping that there's not a confusion using the term land use.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
What will you propose there? Public land sale?
Because actually the language in the board's proposal might be helpful.
What about the chart where is reviewing the process for which public lands are sold, leased, or used?
I think Paul's comment there was the title,
Title,
public
yeah.
land.
Oh, yeah,
is-
that's a
is-
bad
is-
title. Yeah, actually, that should be just like use of public lands disposition as opposed to land use.
Use of public lands?
Yes, yeah, because land use is sort of a defined term.
Okay.
In the business, we would say good catch.
Okay.
The
Then,
use of public land and disposition, and then remove, this amendment would revise and say the charter review board, revision board is discussing the process for. Okay. Okay, and then, beyond this, the idea would be that on the website we create, we would have a, public survey that would allow residents to provide input on any other items that they see they might want to be reviewed.
so how would that be worded?
That would be, you know, something I would probably write up using, with, Jania and, Anthony's assistance. And if there's anything that you think that we need to specify, and bring that back to you for approval before we print it out.
I just don't want to create a situation where we're creating a mess.
Right,
Where we
obviously,
haven't
yeah.
discussed a mess, like if it was a survey that said, do you favor changing the form of government to, you know? Some point we might want to do that, but that's, what kind of questions were you thinking of?
I honestly, I was thinking about keeping it a little bit open-ended. I mean, you know, for these 4 items, there are different ways to do the survey. We could have it multiple choice. I don't think that's necessarily what we want to do here. I think we could ask people for their feedback on these 4 items, an open-ended text box where they could say, you know, what are your thoughts on this issue? They could type their own answers to us and submit them to you, and then you could review what submissions we've gotten. And then allow for them to input their own ideas for what they might want to see revised in the charter.
Before you think about
May I say something? First and foremost, I want to say thank you for listening to us. Very concise. That it doesn't attack you. It's, people can read it, they can understand it. Okay? When you do the survey, if I may just say, just my suggestion, earmark what commission district are you from? I just want to, me personally, I want to see who's answering these surveys. One, you know, if they're from 1, 2, 3, or 4. That would be the only thing I just want to see. But you spot on. I mean, this is really, Mr. Chair, this is exactly all the information that I gave her. I think that when I sat at the council, when the presentation was made, I got lost.
Anybody else have any comments on
Well, I think I was gonna say something like that, but maybe there should also be a line where they can just put their neighborhood because a lot of people
Yes.
just don't know.
Okay,
Agreed,
Cool.
yes, and we could find ways around that too. There are options where, do you know what commission district you are in or what your neighborhood is? I mean, I think pretty much everyone knows what their neighborhood is and we could classify it that way to give you the information.
some don't, you'd be surprised.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we
Yes.
found out with the.
Some don't.
So, a couple things.
People that live in Lake Ridge do not know they live in Lake Ridge, even though there's big, monuments and everything else, markers. So I'm just saying.
Can I ask, how, I mean, cause you've done more surveys, in recent times than I certainly have. Do you think will it be successful where people actually have to write out words? And it's very easy for people like, knock off, little check boxes or stuff like that. I just wonder, I mean, of course I would answer it, but I don't know that a lot of people will actually answer a survey like that. It's just my thought. I don't know, what do you think of like that?
I think regardless of the type of survey that we do want to keep it as short as possible. Because
Okay.
as a city, we do send out a lot of surveys and people do get survey fatigue and they don't always, oh, God, it's another survey I have to fill out. It's another something. I think a lot of it is about the way we structure it and the message behind it. And the kind of engagement we can get from the commission on sending it out, on our email distribution list, the civic associations, encouraging people to participate, and the weight that this topic would carry. Because if it's something you're very passionate about, you want to have your voice heard. I also don't want to pigeonhole people into, if we ask them a question about the form of government, wording that question could potentially sway someone one way or the other if we only gave them multiple choice options. So I can propose maybe a couple of different options for each topic, and you could all choose which one you think is the best, or we can discuss it and tweak it the next time. But I don't think we're gonna be able to get away with not having people input their own information.
I know, most people aren't gonna know what all the forms of government are. I mean, I didn't until we had the professor come and tell us. what they
Yes.
were. So,
Absolutely, and the goal would be to, we could also include, for more information on the different forms of government and have a pop-up, a
That'd be
link or a
terrific.
pop-up or something.
a link,
So
that'd
yes,
be great.
there are ways that we can customize each question so that we make sure that people have the information they need to make an informed decision.
I think that'd be, for that question, I think that would be great, to have a link or something somewhere. Okay. With a real simple description.
our ex officio member? You have something to say?
I was just gonna suggest a combination, if you had a multiple choice and then other.
Right.
That would probably solve that problem.
Excuse
Concern I
me,
have
Jim, for
about-
the record, can you please say your name?
Oh, I'm sorry,
For the record, thanks.
I'm sorry, Jim Concanon,
Concanon, thank you.
sorry.
The concern I have about multiple choice, it sounds like a ballot question, which is like, if we're writing a ballot question. City of Fort Lauderdale currently has a council manager form of government. It has been proposed that we go to a strong mayor form of government. Are you opposed or not opposed? Rob, that's the problem is that what you said about pigeonholing people. I don't want to, I'm very concerned about creating a controversy that doesn't exist.
Right.
In other words, it's not like we've proposed a strong mayor form of government. We've just been asked to look at it. And I'm concerned that by putting the survey in a particular way, people say, oh my God,
They're trying to change.
they're trying to change this
Exactly.
and we haven't decided that yet. So that's my concern about how this has to be done very carefully. But you're right, people are just. I don't want to fill out a whole other blank.
I'm not gonna answer that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna answer that, it's just too long, I don't have time. maybe you can figure out, you understand what my concern is?
Absolutely, yes, yes,
So
I
maybe
agree.
you can figure out, try to how to get some input, encourage, get input without creating a sharp edge where people feel like they're being asked to choose between one and
I understand.
So having, being fairly new to the commission, I'm just interested in this mayor system and its executive form. So has there been a lot of discussions about wanting it changed? Or is this something that we have been charged to be the executor of the echo? Somebody just saying it, throwing it out there so it can become a part of a conversation?
It's come up in city commission conversations where the various members have brought up the merits and the pitfalls of changing it to a straw mayor form of government, but it hasn't really come from the public that I've ever heard.
nobody's come from the committee. They've asked us, members of the commission have asked us to look at it. So it's not like an echo, it's a direct, they've said it from the dais.
Yep.
They want us to look at it.
In that summary that I sent you, there's a breakdown of what the commission directive was based on a joint workshop that was had with the CRB, and that's in there as well.
Pretty much. I was just trying to figure out where the soundbite for wanting
It came
to
from the commission.
have.
It came from the commission.
It sounds like a power grab, and I'm just trying to make sure that it's not something we're being asked to create as a voice, when in fact, the public is not even paying it any
No,
attention.
my approach to this is going to be getting a temperature check of the appetite of the residents for any of these changes. It's not or any changes at all. It's getting feedback from the residents on whether they want to see any changes at all or what those changes might be.
Okay. What else you got, Ashley?
That was all that I have. If you would like me to put together some questions for a potential survey, I can do that. If there's anything else you want to make sure is included in the survey, I wanted to get guidance on that as well.
Anybody have any thoughts about this? Further thoughts about this? Daniel, anything? Okay, I'd like to see the question. I'd like you to bring back.
Absolutely.
What the survey would look like. I think the first part we've gone over pretty well. And I think that it's pretty neutral.
Yes, and I will make these changes and get you a new copy of this as well.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Thanks, that's all for me.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, I've been thinking about this a lot, about how the work that's already been done. And the fact that a lot of you are not privy to that. So I want to ask a question, which is, what do we need to do to get you guys comfortable with understanding that there's been 2 years worth of presentations, discussion that has gone into this stuff, and without any kind of reluctance to go back and start again. I have no reluctance to do that, but I need to know what it would take to, what do we need to do, for instance, on this public lands issue? What do we need to do to get you to the point where you feel comfortable saying, like the recommendation, I don't like the recommendation, we should do something totally different. But notwithstanding, I've thought about it a lot, I don't know what it would take, so I'm asking the question.
Well, for me, it's a lot of data. And, but again, you guys have narrowed it down to what you thought was important. And so if I can just get the bottom narrowing down, what as a committee you think is important, then I can look at that and say to myself, okay, I think something is missing. Let me go back and look and see if there's something missing that might not necessarily plug in to what I feel could be the greater good for our community. So, but if, at this point, I'm just gonna be perfectly honest with you, it's just a lot of
It's a
stuff.
lot of stuff.
Yeah,
That's what I
it's a
would-
lot of stuff
that's
at
what
the
I-
table.
So, Michael, Mary, you saw some of this, but Daniel
I'm
has seen.
familiar.
I'm on the same page as you, Nadine, sorry.
Yeah.
So now, so you should, you know, it is overwhelming and I'm share some concern globally that we're trying to do too much and maybe, I'm not, but I wasn't part of the commission meeting where they rejected this, but like if we like, and I don't wanna, you know, I embrace all that you guys have done, but maybe we pick a more structured approach so that we get something done with like where maybe before the fatigue might have been like there was too much proposed.
Well, I
So
think
that overwhelmed
I
them.
think after I met with them and after we, as we discussed at the last meeting, we're gonna try to take this piece by piece and present it to them, you know, in sort of increments. And what we decided to do last time was to deal with the public lands issue and go from there. But I gotta be honest, in order to really, and I hate to say it because I know how busy everybody is, but there's gotta be work done by the committee away from here. I mean, people have to sit down with this stuff and read the language that's been proposed, read the I don't know, and I honestly hate to do it, but I don't know any substitute for reading the current charter, reading the language that's been proposed, and, you know, sort of digesting it and coming to the meeting and saying, well, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Why is this here? You know, I don't know any other way to do it. I'm open to any other way to do it, but I don't know any other way to do it because there's, as you say, there's just a lot. And you're not gonna, with respect, I don't think you're gonna get it by just a couple hours, you know, once every.
Once a month.
It's not gonna.
So is there a paycheck involved?
I don't know, I've been
That's
here,
funny.
I've been here since 11:30 today at another committee meeting. They did give me.
I'm saying, hey.
So, so.
Let's keep it
I
one
spent
hundred.
the
You
day
got a
here.
check over there? City managers?
Now, I've sat, I was not on this board, but I came to a lot of these meetings, the majority of them, you know. And so I've heard a lot of this, and there was a lot of angst. I mean, there was discussions over like a little word, things like that. And so I don't want to go back through that again. If we can, with the work that's already been done. And now, because I'm familiar with it, when I look at, we're looking at section 8 right now. That's what we're looking at. I think if we do a section, a meeting, we're doing good. If everybody can understand it, you know, there's a lot of, you know, legal lingo in here, and there are some attorneys, but that's probably not the biggest stuff I want, but honestly, I have to read stuff a couple times, like, what is that again? But the more, it's just like, the more you read it, the more understandable it becomes, and this, you know, to Paul's credit, you know, he's flashed out what we've got rid of, and in blue is what we're proposing. So I think it's just understanding what we have done. Or what you guys did, taken out a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just really, you have to read it. It's like you said, you gotta do the homework.
Yeah.
I'm retired, so I have more time than
Daniel,
everybody
what
else
do
on
you-
this
What do
board.
you think, and I'm asking this in the most open way I possibly can, without any concern about the work that's been done, I don't care. Question is, what do we need to do to get you up to speed, for instance, on these land items?
Yeah, I'm still digesting honestly, and I did, as I said, I went back through all the city commission charter since it was amended, so I have a list there that I would put together so I could evaluate what we've done in the past too, what we're like, but that's one, this seems like a more substantive rewrite than we've ever done. Would that be correct? Paul?
It's covering more sections.
We're just doing one section, like for instance, just to focus on, we decided that we were gonna discuss. Last time Paul made a, you know, presentation on the public lands section. We decided today that we were gonna come today and discuss the public lands section. So what is it that we need to go over in order to get everybody either comfortable or uncomfortable with what was done previously is sort of the question I'm asking.
I think the procedure were probably what Mary suggested, we just, you know, we go through each one, I mean.
So that's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure okay, so let's try that and see how it works and see if we can get to a point where you feel comfortable saying that's was a pretty good
Yeah.
swat at it, or it wasn't a pretty good swat at it. So, okay, so if we're gonna start out with this, if you go to your agenda. Go to 8.1. Sale of personal property, there's loads of stuff in there about that. And what we've done is we said that after discussion, that basically personal property belonging to the city shall not be sold except as provided by ordinance. So we basically said, city commission, you decide how you want to sell personal, how you want to sell personal property. And do it by ordinance, as opposed to having all of these, $5,000, all these limitations. So that was where we ended up. Thoughts?
Right to the point. Mr. Chair. Because that, Mr. Chair, my comment was as relating back again to what I witnessed for institutional knowledge when the presentation was being made at the council of civic associations. I looked around the room and more than half of the people they didn't understand what was being said, was being presented, or what was happening. And again, and again, and again, I say this with a very strong voice. Simplicity, 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 so people can understand, oh, this is what this means. Okay, let's move forward. Understand this. Or maybe I kind of sort of understand it. Before, the general public was getting lost.
So this is basically leaving to the city commission how they do this. In other words, if it's a small item, they can just sell it. They can set limits on things that have to be advertised. They can do whatever they want in sale of public property, and eliminating all these things. No property shall be sold on terms. It's got to go out to bidders by publication. It's leaving all of that to the city.
What may be throwing some people off in the public is that personal property is a legal term. As opposed to real property, it's stuff that you can, it's anything that's not real property, and that may be something that's not widely understood, it's really it's a legal term. Right.
Oh, everything, there's lots of stuff in the chart that's legal term. You just have to ask a question, what does it mean? But we're not gonna define personal property in the charter. It's pretty well defined.
That might be a rough. I mean, a lot of people don't. Are not informed, and if you don't define it, how are they gonna know?
It's probably better than saying personal T.
So are you suggesting that we should define personal property in the charter?
I think so, if there is a distinction between what is real property and what is personal property.
There is, yes. Does, so.
Yeah.
So, do other people feel like we should define personal property in the charter?
I mean, I understand what it is, but only because I've sat in these meetings, I think it's a great idea.
Yes.
I probably seems very elementary, but
But that's where we wanna be though, at elementary, because when you say provide by ordinance, then you have to ask what ordinance? And so is there a place that you trail back to know what that is as far as personal property is concerned with this ordinance?
Yeah, what I would envision is that the city commission would tell the city attorney's office to draft an ordinance that talks about sale of personal property. Section 1, definitions, personal property is defined as blah, 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 but that would be in an ordinance as opposed to in the charter. Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with putting it in the charter.
It just makes it long. It's long.
another sentence
I don't, but once you go down that road, guys, there's a lot of definitions for that.
Right.
So, and I think one of the concepts I believe in most strongly is to simplify the charter here, to make it shorter and less, like, US Constitution is actually not that long, but it should be the concepts there. But, and I do support this, by the way, I think this makes sense, but it does get, personal property can be substantial too. I'll say that, you could have naming rights for something. So, but I agree
The
with this.
city commission could say, I would envision them doing what we're gonna do, what we do later in the charter, which is depending upon the value of the thing, they're gonna put certain things in place. If it's under $10,000, well, if it's over $1 million, they're gonna, I assume that they'll do that within the ordinance. Have different sort of a sliding scale, which is what we've done in some of the stuff we've written, depending upon the value of the personal property. The procedures would increase. The more valuable the personal property is, the more safeguards you're gonna want. If it's just old desks and chairs, nobody particularly cares.
Yes.
Okay, so are people comfortable? I want to preface this by saying, I'm not pushing this old language. I don't want anybody to think that I'm happy to discuss it forever. So I'm just trying to see where we are. Are you comfortable with this language in 8.1 as it was proposed by the last charter? Do you want to discuss it more? Are there questions? What do you want to do?
Good parameters.
I thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is reading here? Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy with it. I just think that sometimes if we leave too much for a few people to make decisions, then it becomes a problem.
But I think that's something that we're gonna deal with throughout the charter, which is how much do we, I hate to say it, how much power do we leave in the city commission? And how much power do we leave in
Community,
the community, in the charter?
Right,
The charter,
okay.
right. So
which
that's-
is supposed to be
that's-
the people.
That's gonna come up a lot.
Yeah.
Which is where, how much discretion are we gonna give them, that kind of.
Exactly.
So, okay, so is there a motion to accept the language of 8.01 as proposed by the prior charter?
I should move.
Moved by Mary,
Second.
second by Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
One.
we did it. Come on. Jim, that was good, right?
I'm impressed.
All right.
I mean, we'll blow through this thing in no time.
Okay. I would suggest, if you have trouble going through 8.02 with all the crossouts, if you go to the blue, which is 8.02, which is on a page or two, it's sale of city property to public bodies. So this section deals with when the city of Fort Lauderdale wants to do some sort of transaction with with the US government, state of Florida, counties, district subdivisions. And this is what we've said about that. Maybe I'll read it through so you can understand. So the provisions of section 8.04 and 8.09. City of Fort Lauderdale, subject to the provisions of, and what are those two, Paul?
Hold on a second. 8.04, sale of real property to private parties, and 8.09, leases, license concessions, and use agreements for more than 1 year and not more than 50.
So subject to the provisions of those, City of Fort Lauderdale is authorized and empowered to sell, alienate, which is another word for exchange, give, grant, convey to the United States of America or any of its departments or agencies to the state of Florida, or any of its counties, districts, subdivisions, municipalities, or agencies, to any other public body, any property, real or personal, now owned by the city of Fort Lauderdale or hereinafter required to allow such public body to make improvements on any property owned by the city of Fort Lauderdale for paramount public purpose, to wit, an activity that's essential to the health, morals, protection, or welfare of the city as determined by the City of Fort Lauderdale City Commission or for use predominantly for educational, literary, scientific, or other charity. So it basically says that city commission, just by a simple vote, right, Paul? Simple vote,
Subject to 8.04 and 8.09, which have more than a simple vote for the certain circumstances.
so then those apply to governmental entities as well, when they meet those criteria.
It's 8.04, just say sale to private, like why, so I'm not quite clear what that is subject to.
You look at, so 8.04. Subsection A would require a resolution containing a finding that the sale would be in the city's best interest adopted by an affirmative vote of at least 4 commissioners. So that's the subject to.
Not that clear at all, honestly, but
Yeah, Paul, why don't you go through that slowly?
Okay, but can I give you a little background on something else that occurred to me?
No, I'd really, honestly, I'd like to stay on this just for a second. Let's just deal with this. We can come back to it. So let's just talk about 8.02 and how it relates to section 8.04 and 8.05.
So 8.02,
We read 8.02. This is sale to governments.
so it is still subject to 8.04, subsection A of which would still require a resolution containing a finding that the sale would be in the city's best interest, adopted by a vote of at least 4 commissioners. So it would still be subject to that requirement, even though it's being sold to a public body, it still has to be, there still has to be a finding that the sale would be in the city's best interest, and it has to be by a vote of at least 4 commissioners.
since 8.04 is titled sale of property to private parties, I mean, why wouldn't you just put 8.04A and 8.02 then?
It would be clearer.
I think we
guess
should
it would
do
be
that. That's a
clearer.
good idea.
I think it would be clear.
Is that the only provision of 8.04 that applies to all?
I think it is
B specifically deals with private persons.
private, right? And then C is well, I guess real estate commission might come into play, I don't know. But I kind of doubt it if it's to a public body. So I think A is probably the only one that would really apply. But that's a good idea to add, to clarify that, 2 is subject to 8.04A.
Okay, so if you could bring us back to the amended 8.02, but let's look at also 8.09.
So 8.09, which has requirements for leases and other agreements for not more than 50 years. So 8.09 this is the one that talks about this is leasing. So leasing, license agreements, concession agreements, facility use agreements.
The private part.
For both.
Facility use agreements or other types of agreements with private parties.
Okay, the part that would apply and is not separated out in a subsection, agreement is that agreements having a duration exceeding 1 year shall be pursuant to a resolution adopted by at least 4, vote of at least 4 containing a finding. That's the part that would apply, and maybe we could separate it out. But I believe that's what was intended to apply to transfers also or use by public bodies.
I'm not quite clear, so they can give away property with majority vote, but to lease it for a year, they have to get four, that doesn't make sense to me. The other question, oh, well, let me stay on this one.
I think that was the intent,
Right.
that they
give away property, but they couldn't lease it for a year.
do a public body.
Yeah.
But if it's gonna be a lease, it's gonna be subject to these requirements.
They can give it away for ever with 3 votes. And a lease just requires 4 votes. But then. I'm gonna go back.
It could be 4 each.
It
should be
I'm
reversed.
gonna rewind. So it seems to me that if they're selling, leasing, conveying something to a public body, the requirement should be less. And if they're selling, leasing, whatever, to a private body, it should be more. So instead of doing it this way, the question is whether we should just say, using this broadly, any transaction with a public body should require 3 votes. And then the more restrictive stuff, deal with private party. It makes them easier to do business with other governments.
Okay.
That's one option, to go that way.
I agree with that concept. The only concern I have would be the definition of public body, and I'm not saying I have a problem, I just want to make sure I understand it. Like, what if it was like the Performing Arts Center, or, I'm not throwing them under the bus, but some other, when they say definition of public bodies, does that mean other, I'm trying to think where else we would get into arguments here, where people would be like, well, you should have.
Well, I mean, let's just to help you with your example, I mean, you could have, let's say, a special taxing district, which is probably a public body.
Yes.
And the question is whether we, back to your question, Nadine, whether we feel comfortable with the city commission saying, it's a public body, it's for a public purpose, it's for an educational purpose, we're going to approve. I mean, ultimately, this is, is whether we're gonna put a strict restriction on the city commission, which is 4 votes, which is a lot. Or whether if they're going to a public, the conversation was that if it's going to a public body, that the restriction should be easier to do that. Listen, you can make it 4 votes for everything.
Everybody.
You can make 4 votes for everything.
I kind of think it should be 4 votes for everything,
Everything.
seeing what I've seen happen.
Across the
But-
board.
I don't know how logical it is when you start, talking about, did this just happen with some vacant land around the Performing Arts Center?
Was it to a public body or private?
Performing Arts Center.
Performing Arts Center.
So that would
was
be
on
a
the
public
I
body.
happen to read the commission agenda, that they donated like
Yeah,
3 acres to the
Yeah.
Performing Arts
the
Center.
city did. So
They
that would be a
donated 3
public
years to
body.
what?
3 acres, so
To who?
2.5 acres to the, maybe it's less than that, I'm sorry.
Right, so county, so the performing arts, is owned by the county. Yeah. So the question, I mean, I have maybe more.
Was that approved by a 3 vote or 4 vote?
I don't know.
I have more
I
faith
don't
in
know. I don't know.
government than maybe you do.
No, I have no problem with what they did or this,
No.
by the way, I was just
I
trying
don't
to make sure I understood it, so I don't mean to be, I'm fine with the 3 vote. I mean,
Okay.
we elect the commission and I believe that, but again, I defer to you guys. on that
Right,
one. I just want to make sure I understood it. I didn't think the subject to, didn't make sense.
I don't think this is good, what we're doing. Okay, well,
Looking at 8.04 and that's A section, that is for sale. So the sale to a public body would require a finding that it would be in the city's best interest and adopted by at least 4. So lease or other use would go to 8.09. And that depends on how long the use or the lease would be. So that's why I say in 8.09, what would kick in would be in the middle of the paragraph. So if it's exceeding 1 year, including renewals, Okay, exceeding 1 year shall be pursuant to the affirmative vote of at least 4 containing a finding. And remember, there was also discussion about being based on a fair market value analysis and evaluation of the qualifications of the private party. Well, I guess that part doesn't make sense. Because we're still talking about a
So the
public
basic
party.
question here is, do we want a more stringent requirement for sale for any kind of conveying of city property to a public entity? Or do we want a looser kind of, a little bit looser, 3 votes? Because if we went through, if it's 4 votes, we don't need a section on sale to public property. We should be on everything. We want to treat everybody the same, school board, county, another city, whatever. We don't need a section on sale to cities, we should say any conveyance of city property has got to go by these rules. Sale, lease, anything. If we feel like there should be a more, a little bit more lenient requirement to another, to a fellow government or governmental body, then we need a separate section. So it's a true policy decision as to how comfortable you feel one way or.
That's hard, because when we were just talking about, vacant land around the Performing Arts Center, that's, not as controversial as other things could be. Which I can't think of an example, but
Well, there could be schools in gentrified areas that they could propose for.
You could come up with
Yeah.
scenarios where, where some people might say, well, that's not really a good thing to do with city land
Right.
because that's a fancy schmancy area and we don't think that we should be doing that. They can still do it. It's just a question, of they can.
How
do it.
many votes they
Yeah.
need to, and if
They
it's
need to.
difficult for them to do it, then it gives I don't know, it just seems that it needs to be a good balance.
Yeah.
And
So the question for public, just conveyance to public,
Mhm.
to make an argument one way, which is if there's something proposed to a fellow public body, you have to think that if it's not for a good purpose or something, that they're not gonna do it. So it should be, and the question is how many people it should take to hold up something like that.
May I use this as an example, Mr. Chair? In District 3, I remember there was a controversial item that was happening regarding sale of maybe a mortuary gonna happen in that district. And there was, it was public property that was, it was conflicting right there. So that's just, do you recall that?
yeah, when it was the city, the mortuary wanted the public property,
Correct.
yeah.
So it's a private, but mortuary would not come into this section unless it was publicly owned. This is more a situation where the city wants to give the school board some more property, or the county needs property for something, or, there are, I'm sure, extreme examples that wouldn't sound certain. But again, the question is how much faith you have in the city commission to, where you draw the line.
Well, I'd like to say I have a lot of faith in the city commission, but commissions change.
That's why, as Nadine says, it's a balance
Yeah.
between, and that's, we're gonna safeguard you.
Have we ever seen where it's really controversial in a situation like that, where it's public, city land, public lands being given to another body and, there was a lot of conflict with it? I don't think I've ever really seen that.
Okay.
Do you guys?
What is it? Is it the entities that are involved or is it the concept? Because if it's the entities, you could limit it. You could say school board, county, or another city.
Yeah.
School board, county, or another city. That way you could, if it's the entities that you're considering,
concerned about.
You could do that, and you throw all the rest of them into
To the full vote.
to the full vote.
Right.
That would be, and that would be a
Okay,
vote.
that sounds good.
I don't know, I just made it up. I don't
No,
know.
but
Good job.
that's,
I like it
It's
because,
Then it's just limited to a city,
yeah,
the US government, state, county, city, school board. That would be like there would be no question as to who would qualify. And so I don't know, that's just an option. Another option is to leave it at 3, another option is to make it to 4.
I like that describing the entities and their three is fine. It's all of them would probably move forward. I would assume. And I think everything else should be 4.
Okay, well, we'll get to the other
That's
ones
me.
before, but let's just finish with this. Okay, also, there's another option here. Sometimes things need time to marinate. You know, perfectly fine, just put this on the agenda for next time, if you wanna let this marinate. You wanna marinate?
I want to marinate.
Okay. all right. Okay.
Well, the real key difference for me is the 0.04 and the 0.09. In where, because we're using public bodies here in the title, but yet there's a lot of talk about private parties and a vote.
But
So is it public or is it private? But these are the exceptions.
Yeah, these are basically this attempt to create a looser a procedure for selling to public entities. And it sort of can flip back in certain circumstances to those, but okay. I'm gonna make an executive decision here. So our first item on our agenda for next time substantively is to make a decision on this section. That'll give us time, people time to marinate. So people good with marination, or you wanna make a decision? I'm not gonna allow too much marination, because we'll never get done, but it's,
You only have a month to marinate.
we're forward, we need to move and get done, so.
Okay.
Chair, just for clarification, what section? That's section 804, 802?
Is there consensus that we're gonna put this in and let this marinate?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so let's listen to this, Junie, under old business. Right? Marination section. All right,
Is that what you want on the agenda?
no, I'm gonna put old business. All right. And then please come back next time. Yeah, and ready to make a decision. Yeah. Okay,
Got it.
Paul, do you have anything to say more about this section or two?
Well, can I share an observation that seems to be a common thread in some of these changes? So one of the things that these proposals do is to eliminate public hearings that was in the current charter is replete with public hearings. So in 2013, the legislature created a new section, statutory section, which requires an opportunity for public input on any proposition before it's voted on. So before 2013, there may have been more of a need for a public hearing or more for public comment, and that's probably why it was in the charter. Now, there's an opportunity for public input anyway, without a public hearing. And so, and another little tidbit is according to 10.03 of the charter, anything that's called a public hearing requires requires 2 publications, 7 days before the public hearing and 12 days before. 12 and 7, I guess.
So what is, I'm sorry, not to cut you off, what does that have to do with this sale to public bodies?
If you look at what's crossed out, the common thread is we've eliminated public hearings. What I'm suggesting is that's okay, it kind of makes sense because there's an opportunity for public input anyway, since 2013.
So that's, thank you. All right. 8.02, marination, okay? Move on. 0.04, okay, sale of real property to private parties. Okay, so let's go, let me read Is it helpful if I read it? Or sure. Yeah. Theft is provided in 820, what is that?
Zone Park.
The city is hereby authorized and empowered to sell any real property owned by the city of Fort Lauderdale to a private party as provided by ordinance and consistent with applicable law, subject to the following. So procedure would be done by ordinance, but these safeguards would have to be in the ordinance. The approval of any sale of improved or unimproved real property shall be pursuant to a resolution containing a finding. Such sale would be in the best interest of adopted by the affirmative vote of at least 4 commissioners, so they can't sell public property without 4 votes. In addition, the city of Fort Lauderdale. By the way, Paul, I think throughout this whole charter, we should leave the words of Fort Lauderdale out of this. We would save thousands of words. Why
Yeah,
can't
that-
we say city?
I think that's existing language.
I know, so let's get rid of it. We don't need city, we know what city we're in. Use, I mean, sometimes I don't. In addition, the city of Fort Lauderdale shall have the right to exchange, deed, or convey portion of real property owned by the city of Fort Lauderdale, including concessions, leases, or other rights to private persons in consummating transaction whereby the city of Fort Lauderdale acquires property needed in connection. Seems to me the title of this is wrong. This is a lease, but it says sale of real property, but deed is not a sale. C, the city of Fort Lauderdale is hereby authorized to pay a real estate commission for any registered broker license to this. Real estate commission will only be paid wherever on the consummation of such sale. Commission shall be paid in each instance to be determined by the city commission based upon. Okay. So basically it's saying you can't sell, create a concession, lease to private persons. Except
I wasn't clear, is under section B, we're gonna say, exchange? Is that also required for votes? Is that the intent? I just wasn't clear.
E is largely existing language. Previously, it said notwithstanding the provisions of this section or other provisions of this article, city shall have the right to exchange, deed, convey portions of publicly owned lands and grants. I guess the way it was written originally is that it was an exception to the main provision of this section. It was notwithstanding.
I'm just not clear. I'm not going for or against it. I'm just not clear what the intent was. So like here, it's not clear to me if we're exchanging whether we're requiring 4 votes or not.
Thinking, I would suggest not, because it's not sale as in A.
B is basically some sort of a swap.
Right.
That's what they're contemplating.
I just want to make sure I was clear. I don't think it's clear,
I
like,
think they're contemplating a swap. And the question is whether there should be, so they're swapping city, it's not a great word, but they're exchanging city property or granting a lease or concession to a private person in consummating a transaction where the city acquires property. So it's basically saying, we need this property, let's do a deal with somebody.
I
For
think,
their land.
I would say if we're gonna make 4, I'm not saying we need, but that should be 4 votes, well. I haven't decided whether 8.04A makes, honestly, I'm still.
I agree.
But if 8.04A, 8.4B should require, because that's even probably more contentious in some circumstances, you can see where someone on the beach is exchanging it for something else, and that would be more contentious. to some extent. If it,
This is the kind of thing that might come up where the city needs land for a fire station, something like that. And there have been some property exchanges in that regard. And maybe the answer would be to go back to the original notwithstanding, so it's not subject to A. So if you look at the cross out underline version, it was previous F.
I'm not opposed, to honestly, rethinking, I'm not opposed to making it all four votes.
Yeah, I'm not.
I really don't have a big problem with it. And wonder whether we should just revise this section to include the sale or exchange of city property.
I think so too.
And you look like you're thinking.
I'm
about
still
whether this
thinking
is-
about that general bigger concept, guys, I honestly, but I'm not trying to hold this up by any means, but I think it makes sense to make it consistent.
Yes, so
For sure.
you're
Like
thinking
it-
about
like-
whether there should be 3 votes or 4 votes.
Yeah, more than that, so but certainly B should not be different than A in my
I
opinion.
think my thinking about this, personally thinking about it, was that if the city of Fort Lauderdale is getting rid of city property. Either, then people should pretty much agree on that,
Everybody should be.
you know, and that's, it's especially for sale was easy, because that's permanent. But the question is whether if you grant a concession or a lease or other right to city property, it should have the same kind of requirement. But then we have later on, if you're leasing city property, we have a whole procedure about that, right, Paul?
Well, that people opposed too.
I agree. Maybe there's a difference between sale of city property or exchange of city property. Which sounds permanent versus a concession or a lease, which doesn't sound so
Some leases are, you know,
permanent.
pretty,
Right, and we have a provision later on, depending on the length, don't we, of the lease, different votes.
redo it. I mean, it might as well be.
Okay, let's take it a piece at a time. Do we feel comfortable with requiring, since Daniel, sounds like you're still thinking about this. Or do we feel comfortable saying if the city is gonna sell real property to a private party, it requires 4 votes? Are we comfortable with that? Want to discuss?
I don't wanna hold things up, but I'm not completely. I'm still thinking it through.
Okay,
But
so how about the rest? I'm fine to put all these things into marination for next month. I'm fine, as long as we're sort of moving ahead, but we gotta, you know, we gotta make some, unfortunately make some decisions. But I think that if we put certain specific things into the marination barrel, people will know they specifically think about those things for next month. And
So-
come here to make a decision.
So this would be whether it be 4 votes or not for a lease.
Let's start from the beginning, which is how many votes should it take to sell city property? 3 or 4? That's the first,
I think 4.
that's the first level. And I am reluctant to take votes on things until I'd like to try to reach consensus. on
Okay.
this. And if Daniel wants to think about it, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, Virginia.
That's fine.
Number 2.
The world will still turn.
Number 2, we're gonna put in there 8.04A. So we'll decide whether it's gonna be 3 votes or 4. Yeah? So now. Well, what do you think about putting sale of city property or exchange of city property? So the permanent stuff under A and putting concessions, leases, et cetera, under the lease section. Which has a sliding scale depending upon how long they are. I mean, is there a reason to separate out this section?
As I said, it was originally an exception.
I know, but we're starting from scratch.
Yeah. Well, it would have to be split up then because it includes conveyance and
Right, what we would do is we put the permanent stuff under A, requiring either 3 or 4 votes, we move the lease, concessions, et cetera, under our leasing section. So it doesn't matter whether you're granting a lease, it doesn't matter whether they're granting a lease for money or because as part of a swap of some sort. It still goes under the leasing section.
I think the common thread here is that it's all involving a swap
Under what?
under B.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if it's a swap, if it's a sales swap,
Sale
then it
swap
should
or
go,
lease
then it
swap.
should be dealt with as a sale. If it's a lease concession swap, then it should go under that section, is a thought. What do you think about it?
So you're saying B from here should go theoretically under
Under the-
8.09, right? Part of the
Part of the
yeah.
lease section, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Part of B, the part that deals with concessions, leases, or rights would go under that section. The conveyance deed or convey section would go under 8.04A.
Can you draft that and see how it comes out?
Okay. Kind of hard to tell.
The thing is, Paul, I don't wanna send you off to do a whole bunch of drafting when we haven't made a decision, that's not fair. You know, I think we need to decide what we're doing and then this is not a matter of language, this is a matter of policy. You can draft it, I'm sure, either way. Okay, my thought is that we should have, anytime the city's getting rid of land, it should go under one section, and for me, 4 votes is good. And if it's something less than a full sale, then it should go into the lease section, it should vary depending upon how long the lease is. That's my thought. That's sort of what I'm.
Okay. That's clearer because it said, well, you can sale of real property and then now we're talking about. Well,
I agree, that would make
Dan,
it clear.
yeah.
So, but Daniel's still dealing with the basic, you have a concern about having 4 votes to sell city property?
Well, I still think there are some things in the city that have happened, that have been positive to the city that may not have, that, we have elected officials, so there is like a bigger issue here, like, do we elect these officials, so we have a majority, and they should be able to get on and govern and lead. So I'm not saying I've fully, but there is counterbalances to that too, like if we have elected officials and we have a democracy, they should be able to go on, like, why have a super majority or something like it. It's not, and maybe some of the projects that have been very popular in the city might not have happened at that. So that would be the counter.
I think that's the risk.
Yeah.
I think that's the risk that,
But as I said, I'm not going for or against at this point, I'm still.
Okay. Okay, so Junior, let's just put this issue back on for next month and we'll talk about it.
But we haven't got a decision on it by next month.
I mean, I'm not pushing anybody to make a decision ever, but I.
We should. Yeah, because we're talking this,
Yeah.
sorry, you know what I'm saying? I think we discussed and recognized.
I respect the fact that people.
I understand. I just had one thought. What puzzles me is that in connection. Acquisition of property needed in connection with a public improvement. Would there ever be a lease or granting of a concession or rights in exchange for in that kind of transaction?
Sure.
I don't know that-
Sure. I have a piece of property that you need to build a fire station. I'll give it to you, but I want at least to run some concession in a park.
Subject to other. So,
What other requirement?
marks, concessions.
Forget about the park. I wanna run, I have, you have this other piece of property over here. I wanna run, it's a vacant city for what, I wanna run a parking lot. For 50 years. I mean, who knows the trend, you know,
It could
think what
happen,
people could
yeah.
come up with. Okay. Okay, so we'll make a decision about it. Okay. Moving. Somebody else read this because I'm running out of. Maybe you have to lost the first one. You want to read? Somebody else. Anthony, you have a lot one of the best places. Somebody want to read, I'm just running, I've been talking all day, I'm just tired, I can't talk. Somebody read it. Unless people want to just read it quietly to themselves. Or read it to yourselves or review it.
Great, I'm there.
I can.
Okay.
Section
Okay.
809.
8.09, leases, licenses, concessions, and use agreements for more than 1 year and not more than 50 years. City is hereby empowered to lease to or enter into license agreements, concession agreements, facility use agreements, or other types of use agreements, each one being an agreement, with private parties for the use of any improved or unimproved real property, including airspace over such real property owned by the city of Fort Lauderdale and not needed for city purposes for a period of not more than 50 years, including any renewals or extensions. Agreements having a duration exceeding 1 year shall be pursuant to a resolution adopted by the affirmative vote of at least 4 commissioners containing a finding based on a fair market value analysis of the property and an evaluation of the qualifications of the private party prepared by a qualified independent consultant hired by the city at the private party's expense, that such use of the property would be in the city's best interest. In addition, included in the city commission's consideration of any agreement that has a duration exceeding 10 years, including any optional renewals or extensions, shall be the consideration of an accompanying business viability report prepared by a qualified independent consultant hired by the city at the private party's expense. Each agreement shall contain a provision that the agreement may not be assigned except upon the affirmative vote of at least 4 commissioners. So the intent here was to encompass all types of agreements involving city real property, whether they're called leases, licenses, concessions, facility use
There's a lot of discussion that sometimes people are calling things different things, so it just sort of skirted around within the charter. We could just, and the concept was to try to close.
A couple global, we're gonna require 4 votes, which seems like for sale, why? 50 years. any, it's the same as a sale then, so. Why haven't we leased for 100 years as long as
What
we're.
do we do with leases over? We can't do it.
That, I believe that's correct.
By
And not only that,
Charter.
the 50,
They're not on. Under this proposal.
wasn't
Okay.
that,
Pardon?
wasn't that the BMR project with
That's
50 years? Yeah. That's just, I mean, in my head,
It was like, I think Snyder Park,
Schneider block too,
whatever the.
the pickleball, ones, yeah.
I don't think you can do more than 50 years in.
Well, we could have
I mean, 50 years is pretty damn long. I
Yeah, but
think I'll be here in 50
yeah,
years.
We all be gone from this thing.
Can you do 50 years right now without, with 3 votes?
I think, yeah.
That's a good question. I think so.
I think that was the distinction. You could do at least for 50 years or less with 3 votes, and you, if it was.
I think so.
Look around the room. Who's gonna be here in 50 years? Well, maybe a couple.
What we need.
I'm just saying, it's, we'll be on, but, I think,
So, but what happens if they want to lease it for 100 years?
I don't believe they can. Well. But I believe with, and I've been involved in these transactions, I believe they built in renewals.
there is that where you can lease something and then you can renew it for another 50 years.
Under certain
after that.
circumstances, I don't recall exactly how it was done.
BMR's that.
How about Schneider block with
Yeah.
pickleball courts?
What does the state charter say?
I don't think there's anything. Limitations on counties, I think, but not, I don't think it's,
What does the county charter say?
I think it's 30 years, but I'm not
15.
sure. 30. I'm not sure.
To be the distinction, like, it sounds like we're gonna go to 4, this is saying any lease over a certain time should have 4 votes. And no distinction on 50 years or not, because we're selling it, so why have the distinction? I don't know why we, if we're requiring 4 votes, we should allow 100. But I agree with the, you know, I think that's where the consensus is going to go to, 4 votes for sale or lease over a year. To me, that seems too short, but I.
Was that 1 to 50 years? 1 to 50 years?
1 year and not more.
Chair, is it worth taking a moment to just to review what's being crossed out or what's been proposed to be deleted?
Okay.
Because that's the current provision.
It does say not.
Yeah.
So the way this is written,
I don't think
if
so, but
it's
it's-
less than a year, it's 3 votes. If it's more than a year, then no more than 50, then it takes 4 votes. Question is what happens if it's 100?
Please don't let that happen.
100 is like just like a sale.
Yeah, might be quiet.
Good, Paul, what are we crossing?
Sorry?
You said we want to go over what we're crossing it.
Yeah, I mean, the procedure and the publication and the newspaper and
I think that's less important than what are the requirements for what have the voting requirements? Is there any extraordinary voting requirements now? Or is it just 3 votes for anything?
It's just 3 votes. I just read them.
It's 3 votes and you can only lease for 50 years, so.
there's also a referendum provision.
And how many votes do you need for this in the crossout area? I don't know.
No, it doesn't say.
No, it's
three,
majority.
it's just three.
Majority.
I also would think conceptually like at least 2 years. Should require votes. There is a point in time.
Let's talk about that, what should be the dividing line. So right now, it takes, the way this is written, it's 1 year, under 1 year under it, 3 votes. Between 1 and 50, I wonder whether 50 should go out, anything right now, it's. still-
Anything over that.
Yeah. So the question is, it's for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 3 votes, 4, where should the 4 vote requirement kick in?
Thing is, somebody leases something, land.
Yeah.
For 5 years.
Yeah.
What are they doing with it? Certainly they've changed it or built something on it or done something to it, and then they walk away and the city has whatever that is.
If the lease is properly written, and if they're building something, then they have to either,
Okay, so that
the
was.
city would own the city would own the, whatever they built, or they have to bring it back to the city, to the condition it was when they leased it.
Has that ever happened? I don't know that that's, anyway.
What, when they're done?
Yeah, does
I
that
mean, that's
happen?
standard language in the home standard agreement we put in,
Yeah.
so it does happen, but for those types of things you're talking about, long-term leases, I
Yeah,
doubt we
like a 5-year lease.
enforce it.
A lot of them put it at the landlord's option, so they can either require the people to take it down, or if it's useful, they can give it up.
I'm real funny about public land because being leased, because we don't have that much. And we've had some, go the way that I'm not, only 3 people voted for it and I just think I think it should have been more. The land, when it's, if it's a lease for 50 years, it's gone. And,
No, I agree with you, by the way, there has to be, but I was thinking like, let me give you some examples that you may
okay,
agree or not, like, what if we were leasing to like, and I'm not exactly sure, that restaurant that was on the beach there at Birch Park, like for, like
Yeah.
within the 2 year or 3 year,
park or whatever it is, yeah.
like, does that really require, if it's 5 years or less, would that really require a majority, a super majority vote, or couldn't the commission act it? So, I mean, that's the question I have, I guess. If you think it should be 1 year, then.
That's the state, isn't it? That's the
That
state.
That was a state.
No, maybe
It's
just
not
to
a
make
parks-
an example,
Yeah.
if they're just a 5-year lease, for somebody to do something on city property, where's the dividing line? I think
Okay.
maybe we all can agree that maybe 1 year is a little bit too short.
Okay.
And so the question is 50 years too long. So the question is, where should it fall? 5 years.
5 years, 5 to 50
5
years.
years makes.
5 to 50.
And to be revisited, it could be a language where after 5 years, say you're going to do something else after that. They're going to
They could read.
Right.
Paul, did you want to say?
Yeah, also looking at the crossout language,
Yeah.
the language that's
Looking at
crossed
that.
out. Should there be any kind of competition? Why this lessee and not another?
I think that's up to the city commission.
Yeah.
If they have a piece of property and they want to lease it out, they could put in an RFP and they could lease it out.
So that's competition. So but we don't,
The question is whether we want
we
to
don't have
require it. Then we're back into where we were.
So what was the deal, what was the restaurant on the Riverwalk, was that a city lease, or wasn't that one? Sorry.
River House?
Yeah,
The River House,
yeah,
the old Brian Homes,
there's 2 different ones, right?
Yeah, there's the Brian.
that was city property.
Yeah, that's city property.
And then Anthony Gillette leased it for 99 years.
So there's a 100-year lease right there.
Yeah.
You know,
Nothing worse than leasing restaurants, having been in the industry.
he went out of business
Well, at least your rent would be
and then the
stabilized.
chart house took it.
I think we have crystallized the issue. Put it under old business, you just gotta keep moving.
Yeah.
Because I think people are, yeah, I think this is valuable because I think it's crystallizing the decisions that need to be made. But we've got to make, but we're agreed that we're gonna make decisions. I mean, listen, it's always flexible, but our intention is to make decisions on it.
Okay,
All right,
well, and I think this is good because honestly, they're really seeing it for the first time.
that's what I started out by saying, what do people need to get comfortable? All right. 8:21. I thought Paul did a very good job reading the other. Paul, would you?
I also have an explanation as well. 8.21, disposing of park property. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary in this charter, which by the way refers back to the 8.9 that we were just talking about.
Okay,
The city shall not sell or transfer any land zoned parks, recreation and open space in accordance with the city's unified land development regulations, except as approved in a referendum at a special election called pursuant to section 7.11. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary in this charter, the city shall not enter into any lease, license agreement, concession agreement, facility use agreement, or other type of use agreement for more than 1 year with respect to any land zone parks, recreation, open space in accordance with the city's ULDR without a unanimous vote of the entire city commission. Additionally, any land zone parks, recreation, etc., in accordance with the ULDR shall require a unanimous vote of the entire city commission to remove such designation.
This was a hot topic last time because people were concerned about, city leasing out parkland. And so that's why the prior board put in these unanimous votes. And so thoughts.
So what's the requirement today, though?
So
It looks like the strike it said we're unanimous.
currently, it takes a unanimous vote. It takes a unanimous vote of the entire city commission to sell, transfer, or lease for more than 1 year any land zoned park. That would pursuant to a charter change by referendum in around 2004 or so.
So all those deals with parkland at Snyder Park was unanimous vote then?
those were P3s, so I don't know if those were managed differently. That was a P3.
Yeah, I don't know that, I don't know that.
The War Memorial, was that unanimous vote?
Not sure. I can go, I can look, let me see if I can find it.
I'll be right back. Drastic.
I'm interested too.
I mean, our P3.
Was Snyder Park unanimous?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Like
4-1.
On that
one, I think
Sturman didn't.
Yes.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
Warren was against it.
Live local.
I think that's what it was. It was.
I don't think.
Somebody
Snyder
voted
was
no.
under Soren,
What?
Sorensen was on
The
the
city
when
has no
Snyder Park was
say
voted
And
on.
now they-
Oh,
In
you're
terms
right,
of
you're right.
the existing, they could
But
vote
what's-
on it.
But it's the
Was
P3.
He was absent for the
Doesn't
Yeah, that's what
matter.
happened. That's right.
I'm sorry, what?
It's not the
That's what it
big.
was.
For the.
So if I wanna build.
Was that
Pickleball
Pickleball
courts
courts.
designed to create
Good question. I don't
So
know.
unanimous has to be defined, hopefully.
workforce housing.
Yeah, because
No,
A certain
it's
percentage.
a super majority
was that
vote.
before his
Yeah,
tenure or
unanimous.
it was after his tenure?
So.
Of the
That's a good
body or
question.
titles present.
That's
Yeah.
P3,
private
is
business.
different. I don't know how.
Uh,
what
it's
the
like-
name is for P3.
I know.
No,
he is.
they just have to-
Oh,
No, no, that's different.
No, yeah.
No, because that's.
So yes.
Give them a-
It's being private.
Well,
Fine, you're there, huh?
we're talking about
So that was for.
So what happened?
You have to figure out what happened.
One walked off.
Anthony?
So yeah, so on in the pickleball,
Okay, so
you're
that's
right,
automatic.
Ben wasn't there.
Say it again?
Ben was not present. But Mackenzie voted no. But there were 3 yes.
Okay, 3 yeses.
How was that
Mackenzie
unanimous
voted
then?
against.
That was unanimous.
That was-
I thought that was the removal of designation, not.
And I remember when we.
Comprehensive agreement for pickleball.
So do we know how these prior deals, how many votes it took to do these prior transactions?
Only 3.
3 votes.
Well, let me ask this though. I mean, what we're looking at here. How is this the same or different than a comprehensive agreement in a public-private partnership? Yeah.
I think the definition of a public-private partnership is really broad.
So that's what they were voting on, so I don't know.
Oh, I see, they didn't even do it on there.
I don't know that this would affect a comprehensive agreement.
The language only said you needed a unanimous vote to remove the designation for park. Doesn't say.
That's the last.
Paul, can I ask you who in the city attorney's office deals with these transactions?
Lynn Solomon.
Could you have her at our next meeting? Because she probably could answer a lot of these questions about how some of these deals happen, these transactions happen, and how many votes it took and all of that. Did you do that?
Ask her. But let me suggest this, that
No, you're right, it does say.
this may be where the distinction between lease and different types of use agreements and license also comes into play, because there is a legal difference between, there's a difference between a lease and a license. And this may be where that comes into play. There's, as we learn in law school, there's less of a bundle of rights when it's a license, it's not an interest in the property as opposed to a lease, that sort of thing. So that's where the distinction may come into play.
Because it doesn't list it as a lease, it just listed it as a comprehensive agreement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it wasn't considered a lease.
This was in the motion,
The Panthers?
no, for Snyder.
All right, so, okay.
Interesting.
821 says basically if you sell city park property, requires a unanimous vote. That needs to be approved by referendum.
So it's split into 2 parts. Sale or transfer on one side and lease or other type of
I
use
got
agreement.
it. We're just doing the first section. So you can't sell or transfer parkland without a referendum. Are people comfortable with that? Yes, no?
I don't think that makes sense. So there could be a pocket park someplace that, if it's unanimous vote, why would we want to go through an expense of a referendum? Yeah, I can understand we're not giving away a major, but if it's a little, it could be we'll say any park, it could be a pocket park, that's it's not really, if it's a unanimous vote, that seems to be enough to me.
Sure. Not to be going on where the public has to vote.
So
Yeah.
that they could sell any park with the unanimous vote.
Okay,
No.
I got you.
Remember, there's gonna be different commissions throughout,
Next 100
the rest
years.
of our lives. So, I think there's a reason that referendum is in there like that.
So I don't think they're giving away so much. I don't think they're selling a lot of parkland anyway. So it's
Not
not like
now,
this is
no.
gonna happen so often. But this was a reaction to some of the stuff that happened. And that's why the prior board felt that they should do this.
It's almost like a guardrail.
This whole thing is a guardrail. The whole charter really
don't understand that, but.
Okay,
I find it worrisome
Yeah.
that the commission could all vote to sell parkland without the public
input.
having a major say in it.
You need to say, yeah.
I just, don't. I like all the commissioners we have now, but I'm just saying, I don't think they would do that.
Michael, what do you think?
No, I definitely would say definitely keep the referendum there in regards to the sale of any parkland.
Dan?
I support that.
Okay. You made a decision. Okay, so for A21, the first paragraph, we're in agreement with leaving it a referendum. Okay. B is any kind of these agreements, and there's been a lot of going around, for more than a year requires the full vote of the unanimous vote.
Yes.
Do people feel comfortable with that? So if somebody wants to lease parkland for 1 year, less than a year to do a little consent, fine, but if anything more than a year, then everybody's got to approve it.
Me, again, this is kind of like 1 year is pretty short, like, so if somebody was doing it. You know. We had a hot dog stand at Holly Park, you know, or something like,
Yeah, I'm not really expressing an opinion just to give you the other side. If it's a nothing, then why wouldn't everybody vote for it? If it's a nothing, why would somebody object to it? Why couldn't they get a unanimous vote? If it's like very controversial, everybody wants hot dogs at Holiday Park, that's really great. Who would object to it? Here. And the concern about having a unanimous vote, to give you the other side, is that one person can hold it up. One person who doesn't like hot dogs. That's the downside of having a unanimous vote, is that one person really controls the entire city commission
For parkland.
for Parkland. Yeah. And maybe that's right, maybe that's what needs to be done to protect. the park.
Parkland's precious. We don't have that much.
Okay, so is there some compromise in between, which is more than a year, but less than forever? It's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? No, how about you? No? Okay, are we, I see 3 are comfortable with leaving it the way it's written. Yeah,
Parkland, I want to protect too, of course, so I'm comfortable with that. I just want to give them some flexibility to do things that were positive, like they're redoing the tennis courts at Holly Park, there may be something that needs to be done there, so I just want to give them some flexibility, so I think, I certainly want to protect the park, so I can go along with this.
okay, so we're good with 821, first paragraph and second paragraph. And the third paragraph said it can't be. You can't remove the designation without a unanimous vote. So you can't get around it by voting to remove the designation and then approving the lease with 3 votes, yeah.
Yep, I'm good with that one too.
That's like a backdoor.
Mhm.
Okay. Good,
We got
all right.
two of
That's
them
good. We
done.
did 821 and we did 801.
There you go.
Okay, so I'd ask for the next meeting for people to think about what's being marinated and to come back. And feel free, by the way, to bother Paul or Anthony in the midst, if you have questions and stuff like that, so that we can come back and make a decision.
Yeah, if you either reach out to us directly or reach out to Gia, we're happy to sit with you to set a time that can be.
Mr. Carroll, so you made the recommendation to bring the meeting.
Yeah, so I like if,
I
yeah,
just
I
want to hear
think,
what she has to say.
yeah, I'd like to hear what she's got to say next time, because we have questions about how these transactions happen, and it might help people to make a decision in terms of these issues that we're discussing.
The one issue too is help me out, folks here at the table, the YMCA, the new Y just is within Holiday Law. Is that parkland or is that private land? Or is that city land?
Holiday Park?
The Holiday Law,
Where the lines you on?
yes,
Parkland.
that was parkland.
Yeah, well, so there's a portion of it that's in the park. I think it actually might all be in the park, but there is a portion that's zoned business on the north end.
Correct.
The rest of it's zoned park. But I can't remember if that small portion on the north end's in the boundary.
Any question, was that a lease or is that isn't that?
We're gonna have her here next time to answer this.
Broward Health Department.
Yeah, Lynn
It's
would be
legal.
able to, yeah, but it's by long-term lease. but the long-term
Life
lease-
thing's part of
that.
I
Yeah.
need people on the board there.
Yeah,
I haven't been involved in those conversations, so Lynn would be the best person.
perfect, so there it is.
Well, if there's a problem with her attending, let me know.
There's an,
Chair, should there be a motion for what you just,
821, I was gonna ask that.
Okay, so let's make a motion to, did we already vote on 801?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so the motion to approve 821 as written. Is there a motion?
I so move that we
Mary
approve.
moves,
Yeah.
Dean seconds. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, okay. So I think to be realistic, if we get through these, go back, if we just get through our marination tray, next time, that would be a good progress.
And then we have the section done,
We have the second.
so good
Is
for
that,
us.
is that a good plan for next time?
yep,
Okay, so no new business next time.
Okay.
We're just gonna do all this old business.
And maybe actually we'll bring something back.
Maybe they actually have something to give up.
you will.
Does our ex officio member have anything to say, Jim? Excuse me, anything to add?
I was just questioning Paul about public land going through the live local process. Because that's something that's new. And I could see how that could impact a piece of property the city owns. Or even a park for that matter.
It's typically
Because-
only in areas that allow residential. And I think the parcels that we own in those areas, we would release. We got rid of a lot of land.
I know.
Could we, for next time, somebody,
Or the
be
Geller
prepared to
Amendment.
answer Jim's question?
Yeah, I think DSD could run us a
Are we gonna do this?
report or something. I'll have him.
Because that's gonna start popping up more and more.
Yeah, no.
It already is.
Concerned, yeah. it was-
And Geller.
Well, because I have it till 5.
Okay.
There you have one more item, don't forget on the agenda, the calendar.
It was pointed out to me as I was back in. Okay. Okay, did we get a ruling from, the city attorney's office as to whether people can attend virtually and vote? Can we get a ruling from the city attorney's office?
I can go ahead.
there's a resolution on this.
Yeah, there's a resolution where someone that is virtual can vote, but there still has to be an in-person quorum.
Right, okay, because I've done this a couple of times, like when I was traveling, you know, and so I think you have to submit a request to you. Have to be approved, right? You have to explain why you didn't, and then.
Right.
Isn't it limited though, David? The-
Certain,
the number?
certain
For
ones
certain
are, certain
reasons?
ones aren't, correct.
Is this board limited? No.
Well, it goes across any board, the
So what did you say,
limitations,
sir?
like if it's a vacation, you can only use it once per calendar year,
Right,
for instance, but we are in a new calendar year,
so
so.
what are the other limitations?
I could pull them up, but there's, if you're out, an emergency, if you're out of town for business. There's a few different ones. I can send, I'll send the resolution up. We just updated it as well, so.
Yeah, all right, so I wanted to raise that because that might, give people some flexibility to,
Mr. Chair, the July 3rd meeting.
Can I ask if we change the date to not have it on July 15th? Unless that's the only day everybody else can
No.
come.
Yeah, I'm unavailable the end of the month too.
I think the first question that had come up that we had canceled the July meeting last year. Whether you choose to either cancel the July meeting or look for another one. That, we can do the next Thursday, July tenth, if everyone's available. We can ask that, we'll move the cemetery, board over to the fire station so that this room would be available for it. And then there's some additional July dates as stated on it in the agenda.
You have my birthday on here and my wedding anniversary.
So either of those are good for you, is that what you said?
Okay, so let's move, what day you wanna do in July? Well, first of all, here's what we're gonna be faced with. You see how long this stuff takes.
I think we kind of have to have a meeting.
I mean, the thing is, the question is, I hate to say this. Yes, Michael.
Mr. Chair, also too, on October the second, I am not of the Jewish faith, but it's a high holy day, it's Yom Kippur.
Oh,
And
that's
it's,
bad.
and it's, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a Kanahora.
Did you screen these for different other?
Right, so for we had discussed that about the October second meeting. And again, the second Thursday, October 9th the room is available, so if everyone's available for the 9th, we could have it in this room. It's just the second
For me
Thursday.
personally, unless something like that, I have no idea. I mean, 6 months from now, who knows what
Well,
I'll,
put it on there and.
just put it on there and we'll see what
Call in
happens.
from Timbuktu.
We have so much work to do.
I know.
I hate to even raise it, but I mean,
Well, I think we could do July and
I'm
unless,
not
you know,
just raising about July. I mean, when does our work have to be done?
So I put the calendar together and I'm gonna start from when they're due to the SOE and work backwards. So June 8th, which is the first day of qualifying, that is when, June 8th, first day of qualifying, that is when they're due by 5 PM that day. Now, at the last,
what date?
June 8th, 2026.
2026.
Whoa.
2026,
2026.
apologies.
Okay.
2026.
Took so long.
Yeah, this is 2026, apologies. That is when the ballot questions are due to the SOE. Now, in 2024, they did extend it, but they have not mentioned that they're possibly extending, so I can't go by a potential one.
So we need to be done spring.
April
Yeah,
twenty
right.
We
twenty-six,
need to be done April to give it to the city commission.
a year from today.
A year
Maybe
or less.
I was saying the last dates, we really could have a joint workshop to go through a report. Would need to be April 21st or May 5th of 2026, which would allow the attorney's office to create, to write the ordinances and have 2 readings of it. It could be May 19th and then June 2nd for both readings, but then June 8th is when they're due,
We're
so.
gonna be doing those, like, I think just to show, when we get done with the land use, this land section, I think we should send it to them. And see how they react.
We originally discussed that,
Yeah.
yes,
I think
yes,
we should do that,
Good
so
idea.
that we're not gonna have a huge, less work. It's not gonna
Yeah.
just pile up at the end.
And yes,
And they can think, that way they can think about it,
And-
they can talk about it, they can even have decide to put it on the ballot.
and
Right, yeah,
how
we-
would we
we-
give it to them?
we made the decision that we would definitely send pieces to
We're
them.
gonna give them a report, like we did last.
It'll be easier.
Communication, sure.
We had
Instead of
60,
all at once.
Well, we give it to them in like the form that Paul has done, because that's pretty good, you can
Yes,
see what's taken
that's
out.
exactly
Okay,
what-
yeah, because that's so
Exactly
good.
That's work, thank you, Paul, that's really
Yeah.
good. And then also too, if I may,
Yes, you may.
to quasi liaison here, to go back to the Council for All Civic Associations and start introducing
Well,
them.
once we give the report, they can
To the
do it
public.
everyone,
Yeah.
and Ashley can publicize it.
Yeah,
So, okay,
Convey
let's have
your
a goal
excitement,
to
yeah.
finish this land use section, let's really try.
Can we,
What?
back in July, could we do July 10th? Is July 10th okay for people, or I know people start going on vacation, I
Right
just
now,
want
it's fine. That works for me.
you,
Yes.
at some point, I'm on one to Ireland.
All right, so, David, could you revise this calendar and send it out to us?
Yeah, so just to double check, we're moving July 3rd to July 10th. And then we're looking at for the October, which is quite a ways away, but we're looking to move that from October
Second to the ninth.
to the 9th. Okay, thank you.
Anything else, good of the order? there any budget for snacks at these meetings?
Shania said she'd bring some.
What?
Shania said she'd bring some.
Do you have a budget for it?
I
I
don't,
can get a
we'll
donation.
find, so we'll bring some.
Yes.
Anthony said we did, so we.
Preference, do you want something
Motion to
like
adjourn, are we?
snacky or you
I
want something
second
like
it.
food wise, like a sandwich?
We all approve, yeah.
A nice buffet would be nice.
Like, you want something like
Buffet crabs and crabs.
Snacks?
How about some?
Snacks, right?
Like fruit, some that healthy.
I'm trying to figure out what I want.
Okay.
Healthy?
Carbon
Awesome.
station.
I don't know, you know, leave that one to people.
Chair, we have one person from the public input.
Oh, sorry.
Just asking.
Come on down.
No, we're just asking if you just.
I wasn't planning on speaking. I usually watch the meetings through YouTube, but it wasn't being simulcast through YouTube that way. But it's a lively discussion and I love listening in on the meetings,
So
so
we're glad to have you.
thank you.
Thank you for motion to adjourn, please.
Okay.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.